We have the luck of having yet another super drizzly Thursday, so we are Thursdays in the garden, inside, but I have benches full of annuals out there. I got thousands of annuals delivered on Wednesday, so I am super pumped to do some container gardening with you. So we have, hopefully you watched the video on Tuesday and you saw how to get your pots ready to go. So I'm going to take you through the next steps to enact some of the designs that I have for Five Farms for a reason. So if you have any questions, please do shoot them in. Let us know that you're watching. Love to hear who's hanging out with us today, and send any questions you have, whether they're container gardening related or otherwise. I'm happy to talk plants. So I'm going to get started with, I have two designs we're going to go through how to plant. One of them is going to be going into a regular pot, and the other one is going to be going into a cocoa-lined planter basket, so kind of a little bit of a difference there. For my first pot, I'm actually going to do like a pot in pot. I have this pot here as a demo, but this is actually going over to some ginormous planters that we have at our fitness complex. So what I usually do is I plant the whole thing in basically just a plastic terracotta pot, and then I set it in place. That saves me a lot on soil and filler, and it's very, very easy to change those planters out throughout. So that's a little pro tip. So the first type of planter I'm doing is for shade. So we've got some really nice shade plants, courtesy of our fabulous local growers. We've got Batico and Radibal represented here. Got some more stuff coming next week from Hillcrest. So to start out, anyone who's done container gardening design with me, you kind of know my adages, but a lot of you maybe are familiar with the concept of friller, filler, and spiller. It's kind of a simplified method to dissect your pot into your big bold accents, your fillers, and things that are trailing. When I learned how to do container gardening with a big emphasis on texture contrast, what we were told was frumpy, frilly, roundy, moundy trailing. Spiky, frilly, roundy, moundy trailing is our adage. So that's a little bit more complex than friller, filler, spiller. But what that's trying to get to is textures. So beyond just having a big thing and small things and trailing things, we want to have maximum texture contrast. So this big guy here, I would definitely call roundy, because it's got big, round foliage. So this is a caladium, nice red. We're going to have kind of a red theme going here. Then for some supporting, so I'm going to have have my pot filled to about 4 inches from the top, so that look, I can just set my plants in there and start arranging. It makes it easier to play around. My second player is this really cool bonfire begonia. So a lot of us are familiar with the pink and red begonia is the regular type, but this has these big elongated petals. It is sort of a up and over cascading type plant. Bonfire begonia.
Kathy, do you need to separate the roots whenever you take it out
Great
of?
question. So again, it really depends. In spring you get a huge variety of finish level of plants that you get. So sometimes you have things where the grower clearly finished them, they've been finished for a while. On this one, and again, maybe it's hard to see on the video, but you don't see the big white circling roots. I'm going to handle this very tenderly. It doesn't really need to be teased apart because the roots haven't grown out to the edge. On this one, you'll see that I have a little bit more of a mat of roots. What I usually will do with these is, I think of it kind of like opening a book. I kind of crack open the bottom. We never want to pull too aggressively on them in the spring because they are just filling out. But I find that just holding the pot, and almost with my pinkies, pulling apart on the bottom is a very quick way, especially when you are planting hundreds and hundreds of annuals in the field. It just keeps it going a little quicker. That's a great question. My next plant is Hypostes. It's a nice red polka dot plant. So maybe you've seen this in terrarium planting or house plant, but it's got great venation, a really nice red color, and much smaller leaves. So this is going to be my foil to my big leaves. So this would be a little bit more frilly. This is roundy. This is moundy. Okay, so that's where that whole roundy, moundy trailing, all that stuff. All right, so what I've created here is what I call the big three. So it's like a 3-tiered vignette right through the middle of my pot. 3 supporting players: my caladium, my Hypostes, and my begonia. Now I'm going to get into some nice trailing plants. So here I have one of the few trailing coleus. This is called Lava Rose. Again, it's got a little bit of that red venation to it. I'm taking it out of the pot. This one has a lot of really nice established roots. So again, I'm going to sort of crack it like a little. You can also tease apart the roots. There are lots of ways to do this. I just find that to be the fastest. And then I'm going to arrange this, I'm going to put this one right up here into one of these pockets. So if I have 3 in the middle, it sort of leaves 3 spaces around the edge. So now I'm going to take my trailing plants and put them around the edge. I have a flowering plant here, so I'm trying to sort of alternate flowering. You'll see I'm heavy on foliage because foliage really will carry your pots throughout the season. You always have to have foliage in your pot for flowering, but you can get a lot of really awesome color just with foliage. So here we have another great flowering plant for shade. This is what you might see on a bench at a greenhouse. Don't be scared of this. This is a Torrania, okay? It doesn't have the flower power right now of something like an impatient or petunias or things that you're like, oh, I wish I had more sun so I could grow petunias. It doesn't matter because this Torrania is a beautiful trailing plant for shade. It will really cascade over the edge. I'm going to pair it right here on this side with my red Hypoestes to get maximum contrast. So I've got foliage trailing, a flowering trailing. I've got flowering sort of on both sides of my container, so we're balanced. Now I'm going to pop in here because where I'm putting it is like a morning sunspot, a part day sunspot. So I find you can usually sneak in a sweet potato vine like this, which actually adds a ton of brightness to it. Anything you can do to brighten up the shade. You think of sweet potatoes as a sun plant, and they most certainly are. But you can grow them in a little bit of shade during that morning sun, and they're actually much more well-behaved with that limitation. So I'm going to tuck this guy in the back. So we've got all of our colors here. And then, because there is always room for a Lysimachia, I have brought one of these little Lysimachia or Creeping Jennies. It's great in a container because you can really remove in these almost all of the soil. You can make it any size you want and shove it in that pot somewhere, and it will just grow and spill and be super happy. Now I always have with me, you can see my container looks pretty finished, but now we have to go back through and fill all those gaps. So everything is sitting at the same level in here, and I'm going to feel with my fingers, not just dumping a bunch of soil on top, but using my fingers, backfill in between all the cracks until it is full and everything has nice connection to the soil. By having this little pot of soil here, I'm not bending over into a potting soil bag or anything like that. Everything's really easy because I filled it up already to that level before I began. Pack everything in, and I like to keep about an inch. Sort of my last step is going around the edge here, making sure I have at least an inch around the edge. Otherwise, once you got all these things in, it gets mounded up really high. You go to water it, everything's running off before it goes into the soil. So you want to make sure you have a nice lip around the edge for your pot. So that's one pot done, pot for shade. Now you can see where I can take this over to where my big, beautiful ceramic pots are and just set it right in. So there you have one finished pot. And please remember that if you have any questions along the way, just send them in. And now I'm going to show you how to do a cocoa-lined container. So maybe this, we will do a separate session on hanging baskets, but it's similar to a hanging basket. So I've got, this really pretty ironworked planter here. We've got some nice height, so it really brings the garden up to eye level. Nice to run a patio with. We use these at one of our refreshment stands on the golf course. And because it is a refreshment stand, I kind of like to do a little bit of a play. It changes every year, but a little bit of a play on edible. So the theme this year is sort of like a lemon lime, and you've got all my plants sitting here, and I'm going to arrange them now in here. I have this all filled up. On the container prep video, you saw that we put pine bark mini nuggets in the bottom of our container. When you have cocoa fiber, you don't have to do that because it is extremely well drained. It breathes nicely, it does dry faster, so you do have to be on the watering.
Kathy, why is it called cocoa fiber?
It is literally fibers that come off of a coconut. So it's a renewable resource. It's matted together into this nice sort of like a mat, a fabric sort of mat that you can use. You can cut to size. You can buy refills for these things, but they are super breathable, which is really nice because you don't have the problems with soil rotting out and pathogens that would thrive on that overly moist environment. Great. I've done succulents in these as well, so it's nice. You really have a lot of control over the soil moisture in these. So when I'm starting with my pot again, I always try to start in the middle. This pot that we did before is really more of a forward-facing pot, so it's meant to be viewed from your side. these pots are meant to be viewed from both sides, so I have some symmetry going on both sides. I'm going to start with my spiky. So my spiky here is it is actually a lemongrass. So it's again sort of a play on an edible container at our refreshment stand, and it also goes right along with that lemon lime because it's going to have a really nice lemony fragrance. So here, not a lot of roots up top, but we have some down here. So I'm just going to gently tease these roots open. Every time that you break roots, you're signaling the plant to make roots. So that is why we always break them open. It also gets the roots going in the right direction and gets the best contact between the new soil and the existing soil. So I'm going to work my way out from here. On either side, I've got these awesome electric lime coleus, really nice venation here. Again, you've got that whole lemon lime going right in one plant. So popping it out, give it a little break here. Remove the tags because we don't need those. And I'm going to do this on both sides. And I'm going to really push these together cheek to cheek. I want this to be really full and amazing looking the first day I put it out, and to only get bigger and better from there. So the next plant I'm going to use is a euphorbia. This is definitely what I would call frilly textured. It's extremely fine texture, so it's a great foil to both my lemongrass and my coleus. Okay, so here, based on where I have my soil, this is still too high, so this was in a larger pot. It's actually a quart pot, so sometimes you have to make adjustments. So here I had my soil filling within about 2 inches of the rim here. I'm going to dig it out a little bit off to one side. Another tip is that when you have plants that are right on the edge of your container, you can actually lean them forward, cheat them forward, so it has that mature spilling look before it's established. So I actually have 4 of these going in on all sides here. So I can put these in on all sides. It creates a nice symmetry. When I'm finished, I actually do 6 of these, so you get that really nice repeating pattern effect. Very cohesive.
Kathy, if we want to start these from seed, when do we need to plant in a container?
That completely depends on what you're growing. So you have to, when you buy seed packets, it'll tell you how many days to maturity or till finish. So generally speaking, we're talking like weeks ago. But for quick germinating things like your sunflowers, your zinnias, things like that, it's not too late to start those now and get them out. But most of these, and some of the things like the coleus are vegetatively propagated because that's how you maintain those very specific designs, which means that basically, and in some cases they're patented, so you can't actually start those yourself, but on a non-patented variety of a coleus, what that would entail is basically taking a cutting, sticking it in water until just the bottom of it in water until it roots, and then you can transplant that out. So that's more of something I would talk about doing at the end of the season when big, beautiful coleus you grew all summer. You don't want to throw them away into the compost pile. Now I'm going to add some trailing, some color. So I have this beautiful yellow Calibrachoa or Million Bells. Again, it's just got the perfect amount of rooting. Spring is, this time of year, really this week, like I said, I just got all my annuals in. This week, next week, we are in Baltimore safe to plant annuals. So, you always have to watch for a cold snap because, in Baltimore, you never know what you're going to get. But generally speaking, I would say if you look at the 10-day forecast right now, where we are pretty well in the clear. If I had to, I could cover these up with a trash bag overnight if I thought that it was going to get too cold. That's the easiest way. If you're right in that window, you could always take it and tuck it in against your house where it's going to get some of that residual heat from your house. But for me, it's like as soon as I can get the flowers out, I am ready to get the flowers out because, it can be kind of a long, drizzly, gray spring, and this spring, of all springs, I could use a little color, a little cheer in our lives. I was feeling very cheerful when I got all those annuals in off the truck last week. So you can see that I'm putting these in the 4 corners of the pot so that the front side looks just like the back side on this pot. Looks pretty cool, right? There's always room for something else. So here on the ends, got just a little bit of room to squeeze in a Dichondra Silver Falls. So again, if you saw this at the nursery, you'd be like, okay, that's kind of like a little weedy looking thing, not super exciting. But this is what, if you've seen on these really dramatic, especially tall planters, and it's just this perfect downward cascade of silvery blue foliage. That's what this is, like little hanging pennies. similar to my Lysimachia creeping Jenny, except on the cooler side of the spectrum. This has sort of like that Mediterranean look, and like most Mediterranean plants, it really likes to be sort of hot and dry.
We have two questions.
Yeah,
So one is from Rachel Barnes. She asks, when is the best to water the soil in container plants?
Okay. Generally speaking, you want to water in the morning whenever you can. So same thing for containers. So if you can get out there first thing in the morning before the heat of the sun gets to it, that's always the first thing that we do here at the club. We go around first thing in the morning, get all the containers watered, whatever needs it. We have a whole checklist of I watered this Tuesday, now it needs it Thursday, or does it need it Friday, depending on how often the soil dries out. But short answer is do it in the morning whenever you can. Everyone's schedule is different. You have to water when you can water. It's always going to rather to get water than to not get it because you didn't get it at the right time. Sometimes, especially things like in a cocoa fiber that does dry out throughout the day, or in a hanging basket, summer, where once this fills out and this is more roots in soil, it's really not going to hold on to that moisture as long. So sometimes in the heat of summer, like July, August, when it's really hot and dry, especially if it's windy, you might have to come back and water again in the afternoon.
And then Marianne Malecki has asked, are all of these full sun plants?
Great question. This one is all full sun plants. This one is all part sun plants. I always encourage people, especially if you're right in the middle range there, just test it, try it. A lot of plants will do more than they say. Coleus, that's one of the reasons I absolutely adore Coleus, if you didn't get that memo yet, is because you get these awesome sun or shade. So I could easily take this Lifeline Coleus, I can put it into my shade pot, it would do just as well. So Coleus is a great transitional plant. Begonias, that's another one you can do for both. But this one is designed for full sun. This one is designed for almost, for like 4 hours of morning sun. So I'm gonna tuck these dichondrons in on the end. Great question. And then this is actually gonna trail down here. My lemony calibrachoas are gonna spill down. This is just gonna be a cute little puff that sort of hangs over. And this lemongrass is just gonna get big and awesome, and it's gonna be so fragrant, and I can actually go in there, cut it, and some lemongrass tea. It's gonna be really fun for the summer.
Do you ever have to worry about plants starving each other by taking too much or too little?
So you will definitely have, just like in the garden, you'll have thugs in your containers. So that's one of the reasons why I love using sort of atypical spiky plants. A lot of people will, there are lots of things you can use for spike plants. Now, what we call spikes, which is a Dracaena spike, they're pretty chill in a pot. But sometimes we want to get that red color with a red fountain grass, like the big Pennisetum rubrums. And if you go with, or purple fountain grass, if you go with one of those, sometimes by the end of season, it's like that thing's kind of a bully. It really is starting to take over your pot physically, and it sucks up a lot of water. That's definitely one to watch for. But I'm always of the opinion, generally speaking, that they can duke it out. If there's one thing that looks amazing and it's like the biggest, baddest thing in your pot, as long as it looks good, even if it choked out something else that maybe I loved in the spring, as long as it still looks good, that's survival of the fittest. So you're going to have a little bit of that. And if you decide that you don't like that, then that's where we talked about keeping records. Maybe next year you try to put too many things in the pot. Maybe next year you're like, okay, I'm going to tone it down a little bit in the spring, and I'm going to leave a little bit more space for some of these thugs to spread out a little bit more in the pot.
Barbara Mole says, great presentation, wonderful ideas.
Thank you. Very good. Thanks for joining. And then, so all of this is ready to go in my pot. That's pretty much the finished look, but don't forget the most important step is to really go through, and I find this is sometimes a challenging step for people in the workshops, but you really want to come through and find all the little cracks and crannies where these plants have maybe budded together but haven't, there's still a little bit of space. Fill all those gaps, because roots aren't going to grow in an air pocket, and water is just going to travel right down those little cracks, and it will leave before it has a chance to soak into your plants. So really feel through the whole planter, find any little cracks and crannies, fill them up with your potting soil. Now here, I did not demonstrate, but what I had already done when I was prepping my plants is I did put a handful of a slow release fertilizer to get these started. Usually plants coming out of the greenhouse have been well fertilized, but I think that just incorporating that little bit of a slow release like an Osmocote or similar slow release fertilizer into that top layer, mixing it in, and then planting onto that will help to bridge the gap with your fertilizer cycle. I usually recommend spoon feeding, which is not literally, but taking a like a liquid fertilizer and taking that normal rate, cutting it in half, and doing it twice as often. So using a smaller rate of fertilizer more often, so that you don't have this flush and starve cycle where you give it a ton of nutrients and then they run out, and then you give it to them again and they run out. That can be a little bit stressful on plants. So I usually do a lower rate of fertilizer on these because we are using a soilless potting media. It doesn't really have its own nutrients. You can buy potting soil that has that starter fertilizer in it, but again, that's really just a slow release starter fertilizer. It's not meant to take you through the whole season. I do find that things like Calibrachoa or petunias, if you find that they're not blooming as well, it's usually because of a lack of fertility.
How often should you be fertilizing potted plants?
So if it's heavily flowering in season, I'm usually trying to do it on like a 10-day cycle, maybe 15 days at a half rate. That's usually what we do. So, no excuses. Now you know exactly how to go about getting your planters planted. A lot of the garden centers, at least locally, I know Value is now open for foot traffic, so you can go in there. I think they're limiting the number of people, but a lot of the other garden centers we've been talking about, they're open for if you order, you know what you want. Do a little research before you go in, and you'll be able to get the stuff that you need.
Can people contact you for help?
I would love to hear from anybody who needs help, and I would be happy to guide you, or if you need help figuring out what to plant. Members can stay tuned to member communications for some great upcoming opportunities we have to get pre-designed container garden kits, which will be available for curbside pickup. Take all the guesswork out of it in lieu of the workshops that we always have so much fun at, but we aren't going to be able to do. So keep an eye out for that if you are a member, because we'll be communicating that probably next week. So thanks so much for joining us again for Thursdays in the Garden. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Keep the questions coming. Happy gardening.